Hello, first graders. Welcome to prayer. Today we're going to do something different, and we are going to meditate as we look at this beautiful picture of the Virgin Mary, baby Jesus, and cross. Think about what's in your heart. You may keep it inside quietly to yourself as you pray, or you may say your prayer out loud on your own. So take this time now to think about what you want to say to Mary and Jesus. Thank you so much for your prayers, first graders. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Hey first graders, remember the part we left off on? About Jack running to get the wand of Dianthus, and he can only make a wish with 5 words, so he has to pick his words very carefully. Jack closed his eyes. He pictured the giant octopus, his umbrella-like body and long tentacles, the gaze of his yellow eyes, a gaze that had curiosity and shyness. Jack thought of the sheer wonder of the octopus's existence. The giant sea animal was incredibly amazing. He was like a miracle. Jack wished he and Annie could explain the miracle of the octopus to everyone, but no one would listen to them unless... "Hurry up, Jack, say the words," said Annie. "Make them hear the truth." The words had burst out of Jack. "What?" said Annie. "Make them hear the truth," said Jack, his eyes still shut tight. "That's my wish. Make all the guys upstairs hear the truth about the octopus." "What are you talking about?" said Henry. "What is that stick you're waving?" Jack opened his eyes. He shook his head at Annie, but she didn't see him. "It's a magic wand," Annie said to Henry. "Actually," said Jack, trying to think of something else to say. "Oh, yes, I see," said Henry. He smiled sadly. "You're pretending, like children." "We are children," said Annie. "Come on, Jack. Let's go tell them the truth." Jack put the wand back in his pack. Then he and Annie charged out of the lab, with Henry behind them. The 3 of them climbed back up the stairs. When they stepped onto the top deck, they heard the sailors still shouting and yelling. When they stepped onto the top deck, they heard the sailors still shouting and yelling. There is a lot of verbs in that sentence. Can you think of the verbs? Stepped, shouting, yelling. 3 verbs in that sentence. That's awesome. Jack and Annie raced across the deck. They pushed through the crowd until they got to the railing. The octopus was still in the net, bright red and hiding his head in fear. The sailors had gathered weapons. Some were aiming harpoons. Others stood by with knives, and some pointed pistols. "Stop!" cried Annie. "Stand back!" the captain yelled at her. "You must bring it up alive," yelled the professor. "I beg you to let me examine it before you slay it, Captain." But before the captain could answer, someone hurled a harpoon at the creature. It missed and landed in the water with a splash. "No!" yelled Annie. "Listen to us," Jack yelled in his loudest voice. "You have to hear the truth." He stood up on the bottom rung of the ship's railing so everyone could hear him. "Don't touch him," he shouted. "He's not going to hurt you. He deserves to live peacefully in the sea. He's a miracle of nature." Now, Mrs. Hage read 4 sentences in a row with great expression. Because, why? Yes, exclamation marks were after every single one of those sentences. So it tells me, the reader, how to read those sentences. But no one was listening to Jack. No one even turned to look at him. "Stop, hear us," said Annie. "We speak the truth, leave him alone." "Remove the children," the captain roared again. "Now!" Tommy and Joe grabbed Jack and Annie. "Let us go. We have to talk to them," yelled Annie, kicking and flailing. She and Jack broke loose from the sailors. "She's right. They have to hear the truth," yelled Jack, running towards the railing. "He's okay where he is. He's different from people, but he's a miracle." Again, no one seemed to hear him. "The magic's not working," Annie cried to Jack. "I know," said Jack. He was desperate. No one was hearing the truth. What was wrong? He and Annie had followed the rules. They were trying to help others, not themselves. They had tried their hardest first, and Jack had only used 5 words. "Look!" a sailor shrieked. "Look at the monster!" Jack and Annie looked back at the water. The giant octopus had uncovered his head and raised it out of the water. The sound was breathy and whispery, as if it came from the wind. I like that sentence. The sound was breathy and whispery, as if it came from the wind. What a cool way to describe the octopus as he is trying to speak. The members of the crew lowered their weapons and stepped back in awe. It speaks!" shouted a sailor. "Me." The sound was wild and shrill as it came from a deep forest. "Go." The sound was hollow and haunted, as if it came from an ancient gong or bell or drum. "Home." The sound was unbearably sad, as if it came from the heart of the ocean. "I'm no monster." Now, the reason why I'm taking such a long time to read "Let me go home. I'm no monster." The reason for that is because Mary Pope Osborne has spelled these words really big and bold and all the way across the page with lots of consonants and vowels together. So that tells me as the reader that I have to spread those out and stretch them out as I read them. The octopus fell back into the water. All the seamen and scientists stared in wonder and terror. Then Annie's voice rang through the silence. "Did you hear him?" he said. "Let me go home. I'm no monster." The crew looked at each other in shock. "That's what he said. I heard it," one man said. "Heard it with my own ears." "I heard it too," said another. "Me too," said another. "It's a sign," said a sailor. "We can't hurt 'em, or any other like 'em," shouted another. All eyes turned to the captain. He stood still for a moment, staring down at the giant octopus in the net. The captain looked at the professor. The professor seemed stunned. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. The captain looked at Jack and Annie. "Please hear him," Annie said. "He told you the truth." The captain stared at the octopus for a long moment. Then he raised his hand. "Free him," he said softly. The sailors slowly put down their harpoons, axes, pistols, and ropes. "Sir, I request permission to cut the creature from the net," Henry said to the captain. The captain nodded. "Permission granted, Mr. Mosley," said the captain. "Help me," Henry said to Jack and Annie. "Sure," said Jack. "We'll come too, mate," said Joe. Joe and Tommy hurried after Henry, Jack, and Annie to a row of small boats on the deck. The sailors lowered one of the boats down to the surface of the water. Then Jack, Annie, Joe, Tommy, and Henry all climbed down the ladder and stepped inside. Listen to that again. Then Jack, Annie, Joe, Tommy, and Henry all climbed down the ladder and stepped inside. Now you notice that all of their names are being said here. So do you know what punctuation comes between their names? Remember when you list things? You set them off by commas. So I'll read it again how the commas should go in. Then Jack, comma, Annie, comma, Joe, comma, Tommy, comma, and Henry all climbed down the ladder and stepped inside. Everyone else watched from the deck. Joe and Tommy rowed along the side of the ship until they came to the spot where the giant octopus was trapped. The two sailors held the boat steady with their oars. "Grab the net," Henry said to Jack and Annie. Jack reached out and grabbed a corner of the net. Annie helped him pull it out of the water. Henry used a big knife to slice through the thick rope strands. I like that. Big describes the word knife, which is a noun, and then thick rope are adjectives that describe the noun strands. Lots of adjectives in your writing makes it sound much more interesting. Even though the rowboat rocked violently, Jack didn't feel sick at all. Jack and Annie pulled the torn net into the small boat. Jack kept staring at the octopus. He looked back at them with his great eyes. His tentacles spread about him like a giant flower. His fierce red color had changed back to gray. "Goodbye," Annie said softly. "Go home now." The octopus lifted two of its tentacles as if to wave goodbye, and then he slipped under the surface of the water and vanished. To be continued. See you next time.
Hey first graders, it's Colton, Mrs. Hage's son, back again to share a short presentation with you about animal conservation, specifically focusing on the Palos Verdes blue butterfly. As you can see, this butterfly is a beautiful species that was thought to be completely extinct only a few decades ago. However, after recent discovery, there was found to be a few individuals left in the wild. I was fortunate enough to work with the Palos Verdes blue for a couple months while in college this past semester. Now, on the left-hand side is a male butterfly. I know this because of its bright silvery blue wings. On the right is a female butterfly, and females in this species usually have a more brownish gray color. You can also tell the differences by their legs. The males have legs that are straighter, while the female butterflies have more bent legs. It kind of looks like they have little feet. Because the Palos Verdes blue was only recently discovered to still exist, they are very much endangered in the wild. An endangered species means that without the proper care and conservation efforts, they are at high risk for extinction. What that means is that once a species of animals go extinct, there is no natural way to get them back. That's why it is so important to take care of these animals to ensure their safety. Some other endangered animals that you may know are the tiger, the polar bear, and even the black rhinoceros. You have probably seen these three at your local zoo, and that's why zoos are so important when it comes to conservation. Zoos help to keep these animals surviving, and animal conservation programs like the one I was part of, caring for the Palos Verdes blue butterfly, allow the populations to keep growing. So going back to the butterflies, you're probably wondering what these little guys eat. Well, they feed on honey water and a variety of other plants. However, honey water is, of course, their favorite. This is actually a picture of a Palos Verdes blue on a little piece of toilet paper, which is rolled up in honey water and is given to them. They will rest on it for a long period of time because the taste is just so sweet. After this recent season of butterflies, we were able to send out over 1,000 into the wild, which was a record-breaking number. No one has ever done that before. Now, we won't be able to see these butterflies flying in the wild together as abundantly in this picture here, but after a few years, there is hope that the population will continue to grow and they will no longer be endangered. Maybe someday in the future, you'll be able to see them fly freely in the wild. That is something I'm definitely looking forward to. Well, thank you first grade for having me on this video, and I hope you learned a couple new things about animals.